Hi guys. Alright, so moving on to lesson 7.8 today. I'm on page 465 if you're in your workbook. Compare mixed number factors and products. How does the size of the product compare to the size of one factor when multiplying fractions greater than 1? Any fraction greater than 1 is going to end up being a mixed number. Okay, or a whole number greater than 1. I'm going to actually skip this page with the models because I gave you a page on one of the slides to read about the models so that you can have a visual. So hopefully you took a look at that. And we're just going to jump right into it. So now I'm flipping over to the share and show. I'm on page 467. Okay, so again, we're using, just like we did in one of the other lessons, but now we're looking at mixed numbers. We're comparing the product using the words greater than, less than, or equal to. So if we have 5 6 times 2 1/5, will the product be greater than, less than, or equal to 2 1/5? So when we look at, this is our scaling factor. This is our factor that we're looking at that's going to determine, this is called a scaling factor. It's going to determine what happens to the size of the product. Okay? So if we look at this number, we know that 5 6 is less than 1 because 6 6 would equal 1 whole. So we're multiplying by a fraction that's less than 1 whole. We know that the number is going to be, the product is going to be less than because we're multiplying by a smaller number, a number less than 1. Okay, so this is going to be less than. Okay. Moving right down. 1 1/5 times 2 2/3 will be greater than, less than, or equal to 2 2/3. Okay, so again, I'm circling, here's our scaling factor. This is the number that's going to determine what happens to the size of the product. So you need to look at this and you need to ask yourself, is 1 1/5 greater than, less than, or equal to 1 whole? Well, if it's mixed number, which is what this is a whole number plus a fraction, we can look at this and say, well, this is just a little bit more than 1 whole. It's 1 whole and 1/5, 1 whole and a little bit more. So when we multiply by a fraction greater than 1, we know that we're going to get a product that is greater than the fraction, the mixed number. So 2 2/3 will be greater than, 2 2/3 will be greater than because we're multiplying by a fraction, a whole number plus a little bit more. Okay? And then if we have 4/5 times 2 2/5 will be greater than, less than, or equal to 2 2/5. Okay, so we're looking at 4/5. That's going to determine what happens to our product. So again, 5/5 would equal 1 whole, so 4/5 is less than 1 whole. Okay, think about if you're eating a whole pizza or 4 out of the 5 slices. You're not eating the whole thing, you're eating a little bit less. Okay, so here's going to be less than. So this is really similar to, I believe it was lesson 7.5. Okay, it's just now we're looking at comparing products with mixed numbers. Okay. And then if we skip down, actually I'm going to go to, I gave you a word problem. Okay, so let's take a look at the word problem. Jorge has a recipe that calls for 2 1/3 cups of flour. He plans to make 1 1/2 times the recipe. Will the amount of flour Jorge needs be equal to, greater than, or less than the amount of flour his recipe calls for? So if his recipe calls for 2 1/3 cups of flour, and he's going to make 1 1/2 times the recipe, our expression would look like this: 1 1/2 times 2 1/3, and we want to know if it will be greater than, less than, or equal to 2 1/3. Okay, so we're looking at what is 1 and 1/2 going to do to the product. So if we take 1 1/2 and we know that 1 1/2 is greater than 1, our product is going to be greater than. Okay, so Jorge will be making, let's squeeze this in here, his recipe will need to be greater than the amount of flour that his recipe calls for. Okay, so if he needs to make 1 1/2 times that, he's going to need a larger amount. Okay, so there's a quick mini lesson. We'll do a couple more together on the next slide.